Hello, good morning, everyone. So we will start on lecture 9 today. And uh, you will do your test on Wednesday. And then we're gonna finish up lecture 9 probably next Monday. We'll see though. It's a pretty long lecture, and there's a lot of stuff going on in lecture 9. Today we're going to be doing a lot of drawing as well. So if you want to grab some crayons and highlighters before we start, you could go ahead and do that. Sorry, just fixing my mic here. Okay. So in the last unit of the course, like unit 3, we're going to start with the urinary system. Then we will do the musculoskeletal system, which actually is split into two parts. The skeletal portion, which is learning about all the bones and their structures and how they work. And then there is going to be the muscle component, which is quite short. We're not going to learn all the names of the muscles, but we will learn quite a bit of names for the different bones. Then we move on to the reproductive system. That one is really short. Probably will be done in about 2 hours. And then the final lecture is going to be on the endocrine system. And that one is also pretty intensive. But we're in the final stretch of the course, right? Just 4 more lectures to go, and then you'll be done the pre-health program. So let's start with the urinary system here for today. Okay. What is the function of the urinary system? Well, it's pretty straightforward if you think about it, right? Like the function is to do what's called excretion, okay, which is removal of metabolic wastes from the body. And then we have a lot of different kind of metabolic waste that is in the body, right? What are some examples of waste that we want to get rid of? Anybody have some suggestions? What are some waste, metabolic waste?
Urine.
So urine. Oh, okay. So urine is a collection of like waste, right? Primarily water, but in terms of like molecule-wise, what kind of stuff are we trying to get rid of?
Are you talking like sodium?
Oh yeah. So there is definitely sodium that is going to be in the in our urine. That's good. Excess vitamin. Okay, yeah, that's those are things that we do get rid of. But in terms of metabolic waste, which refers to waste product that generates as a result of a metabolism, right? Okay, so for example, we create urea, right? That is going to be a waste product that we get when we break down proteins. Okay, also from the breakdown of proteins, we generate things like ammonia. Right, ammonium is NH4, right? You learned that in your chemistry class. There is also creatinine, which is a waste product from muscle, okay, metabolism, and uric acid. Right? All these stuff are considered as metabolic wastes, and we don't want them to build up. Okay, and in addition to all these things, right, there are also sodium, potassium, various kinds of electrolytes that we want to get rid of if there are too much in the body. And so that's the function of the urinary system, right, to do excretion. Right? But excretion is not the act of getting it out of the body. Okay, like when you go to the bathroom, right, when you actually physically pee it out, right, that's called elimination. Do I have a, oh, I don't. Okay, so I should probably write that down for you. Okay, so that's called elimination. That's physically removing the waste and out of the body, we'll say, out of the body. Okay, and here is removal of metabolic waste from the body. It's more like, I should clarify, from the blood, right? and into, in this case, the urinary bladder. And so there's a minor distinction there. It's not something I'm going to test you on, but like I just want to make sure that you understand that the two are different. Okay, so like there are other system that does elimination, right? Like your digestive system. When you do your number two, that's elimination. There are others structure that does excretion. Your liver, right? It filters your blood for you, right? So that's an example of excretion as well. Sorry, just give me 1 second, guys. Okay. Now that's the obvious function that most people already know about, right? When we talk about the urinary system, but it also plays a key role in maintaining homeostasis. Right? Particularly, here are some key examples. It helps regulate water and salt balance. Right? So when we are dehydrated, your kidney actually helps conserve water for you. When you drink too much, right, your blood is too diluted, then your kidney will help excrete the water for you, but also retain the salt for you. Right? If your blood is too diluted, if the osmolarity is too low, we know that is not a good thing either, right? Okay. Low osmolarity means you have low water retention, which will in turn affect your blood pressure. That's something that we learned all the way back in lecture 1, right? So the kidney helps regulate water and salt balance, which in turn also help regulate your blood pressure. Also plays a role in acid and base balance. Right? Your pH of the blood is very important. We learned that it has to be around 7.35. So if it's too acidic or too basic, your kidney will help get rid of some of those excess H plus in some cases, and help rebalance the blood pH. So these are the main things that we will talk about in terms of maintaining homeostasis. And a lot of these things are actually regulated through hormones. Right? And this would be the introduction to how hormone works and what kind of triggers they have. And throughout the course of the Unit 3 lectures, we will be slowly learning a few hormones every lecture until we get to the endocrine system, right? Then by then you'll be very familiar with what hormones are and how they work, and you will know quite a few examples actually by the time we get there, and then it will be a nice way to wrap up the course. Okay, so that's going to come at the end of this lecture, probably next week. Not going to be able to get to it today for sure. Okay, so I hope you got your drawing pencils and crayons and markers and whatnot, because we're gonna draw some kidneys. All right, here we go. I haven't done this for a while, so hopefully it's not gonna be too messy. Kidney anatomy. All right. In case you didn't know, we have 2 kidneys. Okay? So we're gonna draw 1 kidney here. The reason I'm drawing the kidney is because it's actually really complicated, the anatomy of it. And if we just do the coloring, like it can be quite confusing. So if you construct the kidney from scratch, I feel like it's going to help you learn it a little bit better. Okay? You know, students often told me that that is the case. So we're gonna do that. Right? So your kidneys looks like 2 beans. Yeah, the kidney beans, right? So what happens is you will have to feed blood into the kidneys. Okay, and your kidneys actually filters a lot of blood. Like we're talking about 1.2 liters of blood going through the kidneys every minute. Okay, so that's like a lot, right? Okay. And so we will have to have a continuous supply of blood to them. And This is going to be the abdominal aorta. You remember the abdominal aorta, right? Okay, just hold on. I'm going to come back to this. I just want to show you long time ago. This is when we first met each other. I forgot when. When did we meet each other? January? Yeah. So this is the aorta arching back. And then I added this thing right at the back. I said, oh, it keeps on going down. It's going to go through the diaphragm. That's the abdominal aorta. And as soon as it goes through the diaphragm, right, the diaphragm is up here. You don't have to draw it. It's probably going to be confusing to the diagram. But your kidneys will be right below that. Okay. And then the abdominal aorta will branch into the renal artery. Renal artery. Okay. So the blood's going to go inside. It's going to get filtered. And then the blood will come back out. And of course, we are going to take the blood back to the heart. So it's going to come out like that. Right? You're going to have your renal vein. Okay, and then it's going to go back up. Right? So that is the renal vein. Can someone tell me where is this one gonna go to? What blood vessel is this one going to merge with?
Inferior vena cava.
That is excellent. That is the inferior vena cava. Okay, see, everything connects together. It's like it should give you goosebumps that, you know, everything we learn is coming together like a puzzle. Okay, so that is again the kidney, and you know, there's a little indentation here on the side. Maybe I make it a little bit more obvious. A little concave section for stuff to go in, right? For the blood vessels to go in. So this concave section is called the hilum. The hilum. Fun fact: this is one of the most mislabeled part of the kidney when I put it on the quiz. Okay. When I ask the class, like when we do physical face-to-face class, when I point to this and I ask the class to label it, usually about a quarter of the class would put helium instead of hilum. Maybe they like chemistry too much, but it's hilum. Okay, Hilum. That's referring to the concave section where the blood vessel goes in and comes out. Okay. So like I said, the blood vessel goes in, you filter the blood, and whatever is done filtering will come back out. And the filtered material will drip out of this tube that comes out. Okay, so that is the ureter. Ureter, and you have two of them. Okay, one coming out from each of the kidney. Okay, so the urine's gonna drip out from the ureter, and it will go and fill up the urinary bladder. Okay. Now, I usually caution students not to say bladder, because we have two bladders, right? We have gallbladder as well, right? So we want to be a little bit specific, the urinary bladder. Okay. So the urine's gonna stay here, and then it's gonna come out through another tube. That would be the urethra. Okay, so don't confuse the ureter and the urethra. There is only one urethra, but two ureters. Of course, the urethra is much longer in male than it is in female because of the anatomy. And so female are usually more prone to getting UTI compared to men, urinary tract infection, UTI. So that's it. In terms of where things are, that's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, so there's no complication there. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take one of the kidneys and we are going to cut it open. we will do frontal section, a coronal section. Okay, and we're gonna take a look at inside. Right. So if this is your paper, right, you want to do a big kidney, okay? Because we're gonna be throwing a lot of stuff um, into the kidney. All right, so here we go. Big kidney. Try to do this properly. I actually like doing this on the board much better. It's easier to draw. Less color though on the whiteboard. So there we go. And so this is the hilum, right? The hilum, and it's gonna come out like that. It's gonna come out like that. So just to orient you again, this is the ureter. And this like bigger portion that is immediately coming out of the kidney, that is called the renal pelvis. It's just like the beginning of the ureter, basically, right? Like a transition from from the kidney coming out and becoming like a more narrow tube. That's called a renal pelvis. All right. So far everything should be still pretty straightforward. And what we're going to do now is we will draw some triangles, okay, on the inside. Right. Now, depending on how you cut the kidney, and depending on which section you're looking at, sometimes there are like, 6, 7 of these triangles, sometimes like even 8 or 9 of them. But for simplicity, we're just going to draw 3, okay? 3 of these little triangle. Now it looks like a wedge of lemon, right? Or lime, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna give it a little bit more space here. There we go. That should be okay. 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 If you go to the supermarket, the butcher section, the meat section, sometimes you can actually buy kidneys, like pig kidneys. That's a common one. I think I've seen cow kidneys sometimes as well. And remarkably, it looks very, very similar to the human one, right? Like you might not even be able to tell whether it's like pig one or human one. The size is about the same, the color is about the same. And if you ever see those next time you go, or like you deliberately look for them, right? Like try to poke at it a little bit. It's really elastic, the texture. Like you poke it and then it goes in, but then as soon as you remove your finger, it just kind of re-inflate itself. Okay, so that little elasticity that surrounds the kidney, that gives it a little bit of protection, right? That is actually a special type of connective tissue that goes around the kidney. Okay, and we call that the renal capsule. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to draw here. It's like a casing that goes around the kidney. Okay, and again, we call that the renal. Everything starts with renal, okay, which means like kidney, right? Renal capsule. Again, it's just this tough, fibrous type of casing that goes around the organ. So these little triangles, and again, you have way more than 3 in your kidneys, and they kind of stack together. Like if I look at a deeper slides, you might have another one like behind, right? Like don't draw this, but like there might be one behind these 2, right? And they're just gonna basically find You will be able to find them in multiple layers of the kidney, and these are called the renal pyramid, which kind of makes sense. They little triangle shaped stuff. It's a renal pyramid. Another renal pyramid here, another one here. And between the renal pyramid, you have these empty space, right? Sort of, right? Just like tissues. We call them the renal column. Renal column. Okay? So the triangles of the pyramid, the space between them are the columns. And together, collectively, these things are found on the inside, on the interior of the kidney. So the interior is what we call the renal medulla. A lot of organs are separated into like the outer portion and the inner portion. Inner portion is the medulla, okay? And the outer portion is the cortex, like the cerebral cortex that we learned, right? The outer layer of the brain, right? So the exterior, like this portion here, that would be the renal cortex. Right? Now, functionally speaking, the renal cortex has to be less salty, lower osmolarity. Whereas the renal medulla is going to have higher osmolarity. It has to be saltier, like literally saltier. Okay, more sodium chloride. And that is very important in terms of creating urine. We will explain why later, but now I just want to plant that in your head that the cortex has lower osmolarity and the renal medulla has higher osmolarity. In fact, the deeper you go, the higher the osmolarity is going to be. Feel free to interrupt me if I'm not making sense here. Now, at the tip of our renal pyramid, this pointy end, pointy tip right here, right? If you think about eating a slice of watermelon, like the tip here, the sweetest part, and that's kind of like the tip right there. Okay, that is the renal papilla. Renal papilla. That's not gonna fit, is it? Where should I put it? Maybe here. Okay, renal papilla. Now, it's not the first time we hear the word papilla, right? When we talked about the taste bud, the tongue, there were also papilla, right? Papilla just means like a little knob, little pointy thing, right? Those little cylindrical thing on the tongue, right? Those are papilla, right? So there's a little pointy thing here at the end. Okay, so urine is going to collect in this tip, and then it will slowly drip out. The best way to imagine this is like, sometimes when in a warmer winter day, warm sunny winter day, right? You look at the icicles that are forming in the eavesdrops, they are melting, right? So it kind of drips down, right? It's the exact same thing, but instead of like melting water, it's like urine that's dripping out constantly. Okay? And so all those things that are dripping out, we will collect them. We'll collect them in an area that's immediately outside of the papilla. Okay, so let me just color them in a little bit here for you. Okay, so those things that I just color, right? That's called a minor calyx. Okay, calyx is singular, plural is calyxes. Okay, in case you run into that. Okay, so multiple minor calyxes, and this one is just a minor calyx. Okay, so the urine will come out, and then they will join together merge together to form like a bigger cavity, right? So this bigger cavity right here, you just choose another color. That's gonna form the major calyx. Major calyx. All right. So it drips out. First go to a smaller chamber, the minor calyx, and then it goes to the bigger chamber together, major calyx, and all of them will go into the renal pelvis and slide down the ureter. And where does the ureter go to? If you remember our earlier drawing, the ureter will connect to the urinary bladder. Okay. Are we together here, guys? Any questions about what we've drawn here? Hopefully it's pretty straightforward, but if you want me to clarify anything, please. Great. So usually what I do is I will ask students to go to the study guide here, and I'm gonna give you like maybe 5-6 minutes.
Professor,
Yeah,
can you go back to the
sure,
drawing
sure.
for a minute, please?
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let me know when you're good, okay?
Hi.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so usually I ask people to label this on their own, but you know, why don't we try to do it as a group effort, okay? Like some of you I haven't heard from you all semester. Like I mean I recognize some of you. Some of you were in my class, and you know, you could just participate online as much as you did in person, okay? But anyways, if you don't feel comfortable and unmuting your mic, you can type the answer as well. But I want to do this together, okay? So I know that we that you've understand this, all right? So do try to participate. All right, the first one is a little bit hard. Like people not sure which one it is, and I understand because it's hard to tell, you know, whether is vein or artery, and you know, it's not always at the front. Like some people say, oh, the one at the front is the artery, because that's what we drew earlier, right? Like it really depends on the diagram. But this one here is the vein. Okay, and the reason I know it's the vein is, well, I looked at the answer key, but more importantly, is bigger, right? It's quite big, the diameter, right? And so that would be the renal vein. Now I know it's confusing. Like, how do you know if it's renal artery or vein without me telling you on a test or quiz? That's okay. I won't be asking you to label these things. The artery and the veins, because I know it's confusing, right? So renal artery. Let me just color that. There we go. Okay, so now group effort. Okay, tell me, what is D? Someone tell me what D and E are. You can private message me if you want. You can. Yes,
Urethra and renal pelvis or something like that.
yes, that is absolutely correct. So D is the renal pelvis, right? And this is the ureter. Okay, ureter. What about this right here? What is B pointing at?
Hilum.
The hilum. That's right, Shelley. Hilum. Just like a little depression, right? A little indentation for all the stuff to go in and come out of. Okay, so artery goes in, vein comes out, ureter comes out. That's it. All right. So here, find something that you can identify and then tell me what it is. Okay, again, type it in the chat box. Right? Just type like, F and then the name that you think it is. Right? Everybody should try to participate a little bit for this exercise.
Is G the minor clips?
G,
Pointing
let
to,
me
like,
see. G is pointing at this here. G is actually the major one, right? And I know it's confusing, but let me help you guys out a little bit here, right? Perhaps. Let me draw some pyramids here. And so there's a pyramid, and there is a pyramid, right? There we go. Right, so the space that's immediately outside of the pyramid, right? M right here, right? Which one would that be? Right? That would be the minor, right? And I'm going to use the plural here because it's pointing at two of these things, right? Yeah. Oh, I guess I'm answers. Oh, good. Let's see. What have we got here? We have F is the renal capsule. Yes, that's correct. Okay, I'm going to try to outline it here. Okay, anyone else? There's a lot of people I haven't heard from for a while. Elvin, Emma, Stephanie. You guys probably know the answer, right? Zia, did you give me something? I think you did, right? Okay, so there we go. That's the renal capsule. Very good. Let's see what else we have. K is renal papilla. Very good. And I'm gonna color the whole thing right there. That's the whole thing right here. That's the pyramid. And I'm just gonna color a few of them. Okay, so all those things are renal pyramid, the J. Okay, and the tip of it, just gonna color it red. Hopefully, what's coming out is not actually red though. That would be a serious cause for concern. And that's K, right? The renal papilla. What else we got here? Let's see. I, L, sorry. L, is that an L or I? That's an I, right, Zia, I think? Yeah, I, okay, I. I is the renal cortex, that's right. Renal cortex, the outside, right? Just the perimeter of it. And then L is actually the space between those pyramids. Very good. Okay, so that would be the renal column. And let's see. Oh, I have a lot of messages. I like that. Let's see. Okay, a few other people. Brill also got the renal cortex. Excellent. G. What's G? G is the major. Good. Okay, so let's take a look at this again, right? Let me just highlight it with different shades of blue. Immediately outside right here, all those smaller, narrower tubes, those are the minor calyxes. And then the minor calyxes will join together to form the major one. It's basically like this bigger area. Like for me, one way to visualize this is going to the movie theater, right? Like we pay our tickets and then we all start in this bigger area, and then we head into these more narrow corridors that goes into the individual auditorium. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but like that's how I visualize it, right? The minor galaxies would lead into the individual auditorium, and then the major one, it's like the bigger area, right? The bigger atrium. So that is, let me write that out for you, major galaxies. Okay, and I think that was the color that I used. There we go. Okay, what else do we have? Let's see. D is renal pelvis. Very good. Okay, so I saw a message for that. This is renal pelvis. Okay, what else do we have? Okay. E is ureter. Good. And we are missing H. Anybody know what H is? Oh, I guess nobody know what H is because I didn't tell you what that was, right? Okay, this is the renal sinus. It's just like an empty space. Okay, renal sinus. It just gives some wiggle room for the ureter, right? So it's like a little bit of space for it to move around if it needs to, a little bit of yeah, wiggle room, flexibility. Okay, great. Right, we've drawn it together, we label it together. Now I think you have a pretty good picture of what the kidney looks like, right? Okay, hopefully. Any questions before we move on? Okay. Fear not, we are going to have more drawings later. But now let's go back to our PowerPoint and just go through it one more time. Okay, so this is exactly what we label. Right? We have the individual kidneys. Right? The one on the left is a little bit higher compared to one on the right. So I'm not sure why that is the case. And if you think about the individual kidneys, each kidney is like wearing like a party hat. Okay, there's an organ, a structure that's on top of it, and that is the adrenal gland. Right? We'll learn more about the adrenal gland later on in the lecture, but you probably have heard of adrenaline, right? Adrenaline is something that's released during the fight or flight response, and adrenaline comes from the adrenal gland. And so this is the kidney. This is the adrenal gland. Right? So there are other stuff that comes out of the adrenal gland that we're going to look at. And there's various hormones. So there are two adrenal glands. Each sits atop the kidney. Right? We see the abdominal aorta coming down. Right? We see the renal artery going in, inferior vena cava. Right? Someone mentioned that earlier. This is a female, and we know that because we see the ovaries here, right? So the ureters come down, and that's the urinary bladder, okay? And this one right here, the one at the front. And then behind it is the uterus, right? So during pregnancy, the baby grows inside the uterus, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be pressing on the urinary bladder, right? So you probably heard that pregnant women, they need to go to the bathroom more frequently, right? And that's the reason, because of the close proximity of the uterus and the urinary bladder. What is this thing here that has been cut away? What might that be? Any guesses?
Stomach.
Yeah, the stomach is gone. That's right, exactly right. But this would be like the remaining esophagus, right? Esophagus comes through the esophageal hiatus, right here. Something you will be studying for to prepare for the test. But then, yeah, you're right. The stomach is gone, right? The stomach is supposed to be here, right? And then the pancreas is here. The liver is here. The spleen, right? So all those stuff has been taken away to show you the kidneys. And kidneys are more residing at the back of the abdominal cavity. This is just stuff that we talked about already. You can read that on your own, right? And same thing here, just more description. And one thing that we did not mention earlier is this thing called the renal fascia. That's how you pronounce it. The renal fascia is basically a collection of fat tissue. Adipose tissue means fat tissue, right? And it bubble wraps the kidney. Right? We already know fat is responsible for insulation, keeping things warm, as well as a protection, right? Cushioning, right? And that's what the renal fascia is for. You cannot, it's not included in this diagram, but it's just like, fatty stuff that kind of goes all around the kidney. Okay, it's not a very good drawing, but just keep it snug in our abdominal cavity. Everything else is pretty much what we described already. So do read that through while you are looking at your diagram. This is the real thing, and you can see the pyramid. Right? It's nice to match up the real diagram with like a cartoon drawing, so you just give you a different perspective, right? Okay. Again, nothing new here. We drew all this already. We label it on the diagram. You just have to spend some time to look at this yourself to help consolidate the learning. So like I said, the kidney's main function is to help filter out waste products such as urea, creatinine, right, out of the blood, and then it will excrete them into the urine. So approximately 1.1, 1.2 liters of blood flows through the kidney each minute, which is accounting for 20% of your cardiac output. I remember cardiac output is like the total volume of blood that you pump out per minute, right? And 20% of those volume will end up going through your kidneys, right? And we know that the kidneys will receive blood from the renal artery that are branching off from the abdominal aorta. So just a little bit of new information here. Otherwise, it's same thing that we have been talking about. Okay, just very quick poll question here. Should be very straightforward. If you had been with me. Okay, very good. Yeah, I mean, I expect everybody to get that. How about this one? Also fairly straightforward. Okay, good. Very good. All right, let's draw some more stuff. So where are we now? Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look at our blood supply to our kidney. So you want to start a new page, okay? You want to start a new page for this thing. Hold on, let me think about how I should do this. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, let's go for this. So we're gonna start a new page here. I mean, you're gonna start a new page, and we will call this the blood supply, blood flow. blood flow within the kidney. All right. And for this, I recommend having two colors, two highlighters probably, to alternate between. You see what I mean. So let's draw our kidney again. I always end up like using more and more space on this app. Like I keep finding myself having to zoom out more and more as I draw. All right. So here's what I'm gonna do. I will switch color every time, like alternate between two colors every time the blood vessel branches. Yeah. And let's put in some pyramids here. And I have to do this like at the right angle. So it's gonna look good. There we go. Just pop one more in here. It really does look like a slice of you know, like tangerine or something. Okay. So here we go. Just the simple one first. Oh yeah. The candy corn, right? The little triangle stuff. So there we go. That is the abdominal aorta. Right? Nothing new. Same old, same old. There we go. And it's gonna branch into the renal artery. Also nothing new. All right. And then it gets all weird. Of course, the renal artery is going to enter the kidney through the hilum, and as soon as it goes inside, it's going to branch into these smaller ones. Okay, when you draw it, make sure you go to the renal papilla, to the tip. Okay, so they branch into these smaller ones. Okay, and they are called segmental artery. A little segment, right? So segmental artery. And they kind of lead towards the renal papilla. And when it gets to the renal papilla, it will branch again. So that's why I'm switching color. It will kind of branch. It's this thing that travels up along the edges of your renal pyramid. It's going to go up like that. And just like along the edges, hugging it. Those are the interlobar. Like who comes up with these names, right? Interlobar artery. And when they get to the outer edge, kind of like the boundary between the cortex and the medulla, right? They will turn and hug the outside. Now, the arch, right? Goes around the outer edges. If this was a slice of pizza, it would be the part that you're holding, the crust, or it goes around the crust. And that is called the arcuate artery. I know this is not really gonna help or make you feel better, but just in case it does, arcuate means curve, like an arch. So this is an artery that forms an arch, arcuate artery. All right. And then from the arcuate artery, there are these little ones that comes out. And like little hair coming out. So those little things that are coming out, those are the, well, they're in the cortex of the kidney, so it's cortical. And they're like radiating out. Cortical radiate artery. That's what they're called. Okay. Now, it keeps on going a little bit more, but we cannot talk about that yet because we have to learn something else first before we can fill in that part. Okay, so just believe me for now. That's gonna branch a couple more times, and eventually it's gonna come back out. Okay. So when it does come back out, and you don't have to draw this next part if it makes your diagram too messy, okay? You can just watch me do it. When it does come back out, you will have these, ones that are like adjacent to it, right next to it, right? So those would be the cortical radiate vein, right? Okay, and then I'm not gonna draw it either. It's gonna get confusing even for this diagram, but you can guess what happens next, right? The cortical radiate veins will then join together to form the arcuate vein. Right? Arcuate vein. You know what? Maybe I'll draw it. Let's see how if it's gonna be okay. Maybe it's gonna be okay. Right? So you're gonna have this one, the arcuate vein, right? Right next to the arcuate artery. Arcuate vein, and you can pretty much teach the rest of this segment, right, yourself. We would have the what do we call this thing now? This one is going to be the interlobar vein. Okay. Now I don't know why, but the person, or like maybe there was a committee that comes together and decide this stuff. I have no idea. But in the textbook, there is no segmental vein. Okay, like the people who label the kidneys, who came up with these names, they were like, okay, from the interlobar vein, we'll just say it goes out and become the renal vein. Okay, so everything has a counterpart. Each artery has a vein counterpart, but segmental vein does not exist. Okay, again, I don't know why. It's just the way it is. The people who come up with these labels, they decided to just skip that. Okay, so from interlobar vein, it just goes directly to renal vein. Right? So in case you read the textbook and you're wondering why is that the case? We don't know. So that's that. I hope you're okay with it. Sorry, give me a second. My mouse just ran out of juice. Let's see if I can find a cable. So remember, right, like going through all these blood vessels is going to be 1.1 to 1.2, depending on how much blood you actually have, right, of blood every minute. And then, it's going to be a constant supply, okay, 20% of your cardiac output. All right, here we go. This is the professional drawing, as I always like to call them, right? Just to show you that, I didn't make that stuff up. It's actually what it is. But the reason we drew it together is because, like, again, it's confusing if you just look at the diagram on its own, right? Like, it's much better when we construct it together. Okay, so that's the blood supply to kidney. I think there's a diagram in the studying guide as well for this blood vessel stuff. Do I have it? I think it's the third one, right? Where is it? Oh no, I took it out. Interesting. Not sure why I did that. But maybe I'll post one later for you to label. But that's it. Okay. What else do we have here? All right, so this talks about the blood flow, right? The renal artery going in, becoming the segmental, interlobar going up the edges, and then we have the arcuate, which is the one on the outside, and then the cortical radiate, and then a bunch of stuff that we didn't talk about just yet. Okay, but then it does come back out. Cortical radiate vein, the counterpart, arcuate vein, going back down along the edges, interlobar vein. And like I said, it just skipped directly to the renal vein. Okay? And here you can see a nice renal pyramid and the renal papilla at the tip here. And then you have the cavity, the minor calyx, which is just collecting the urine, which would then go to the major calyx, right? Okay. So let's see. Okay, we cannot do this yet. I still have to teach you one more thing. Probably shouldn't put this question here, but let's see if you can do this, right, from memory. If you could do it from memory, excellent. If you can't do that yet, that's okay. You can look at the diagram that we drew. Really? Only three responses? All right. So this is the pyramid, right? This is the pyramid. And then we have the interlobar coming up. And then outside here, we have the arcuate, right? Arcuate. And then the cortical radiate, the crazy hair, right? Okay, so cortical radiate artery branches from the arcuate artery. A. Okay, we didn't learn about this one yet. And then this one is the interlobar is the one that are coming up from the side, right? And then if we go one step back, that would be the segmental. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm just thinking if we should take a quick break first because we still have to draw some more stuff. You know what? Let's keep going for now. Yeah, let's keep going. Okay. So another thing now. This is called the nephron. nephron. Nephron is a tubular structure, right? Hollow tubular structure. I mean, you have these in your notes as well, but let's just write them down here. They are the functional unit of kidney. You have millions of these inside each of the kidneys. Now, where do you find them? Okay, so let's draw our like a small one here, tiny one, tiny kidney, and the pyramid now, the candy corn, the watermelon slice, the pizza slice, whatever you want to imagine them to be. All right. So where will you find this nephron? Right? It's gonna be right here. This is not to scale, okay? By the way, this is not to scale. The pyramid you can see like macroscopically. You cut open a kidney, you will be able to see these things. But the nephron, they are microscopic. You won't be able to see them with your naked eye, okay? You have to put it under the microscope. But just show that you so that you can see where they are. It's gonna be like this, right? So like that. There is a nephron. You have thousands, millions of these things. Okay, so like a ball, and then it's gonna go down, and then come back up, and then go down again. So this is a nephron. Oh, what is going on here? Nephron. Okay, let me restart the program. It's like very glitchy lately. I'm not sure why. There we go. All right. So what we will do now is to take a nephron out, and we'll draw it and label it, and then I'll do some explanation. All right. So here is the nephron. Okay. By the way, just so you know, the actual nephron is like all twisted up like this in the kidney. Okay. Like you look at that and you try to label that, you're like, what? Right. So we're gonna deconstruct it and spread it out first. But just know that in real life, it's all coiled up, right? It's very convoluted, we say, right? It's like a crazy straw, right? You guys know crazy straw? I think that's what they're called, right? Like, when you order like a fancy drink or something, there's these like, straws that are like really crazy, right? So the nephron is kind of like that. Anywho, so that's what a nephron will look like if we, just untangle it for a little bit and draw it out. All right. I promise it will all make sense in the end. Everything will connect with the blood vessels, with the the anatomy, everything. It will all make sense in the end. So just stay with me for a little bit. So this ball here, that's kind of like the start of it. And this is called the Bowman's capsule. Bowman is probably the person who discovered it. I actually do not know. Capsule. Now, I again, this is not to scale. This is not to scale at all. I'm just trying to help you see things. By now, you should recognize what this is, right? This is the renal pyramid, right? Can someone please tell me, make me feel better that you to convince me that you are with me? What is this artery that's on the outer edge?
The arcuate artery.
That's right. That is the arcuate artery, right? Okay, I will label that for you one more time. And then you have these little crazy hair, right? I keep on calling them. Okay, I'm just gonna draw one that's really, really, really big, really long. And that is the cortical radii artery. And I said, you know, it's gonna branch a couple more times, but then I didn't tell you what it was, right? So here we go. Coming off from the cortical radii artery are more little wavy stuff. Okay, it's like it has hair growing on the hair. And this one's gonna come over here. And this one will lead to another Bowman's capsule. This one will lead to another Bowman's capsule. Each of these will feed into a particular nephron. Okay. And the name of this one is the afferent arteriole. Let me move the Bowman's capsule a little bit away here for a second. Okay, so this here is the afferent, AFF. We know afferent means it leads into something, right? So that's afferent arteriole. Let me zoom in for you. Afferent arteriole. Okay, now pay attention to this next part. The afferent arteriole will go into the Bowman's capsule, and then it becomes a network of capillary. Okay, so this is a capillary network like that. And then it will exit on the other end. Okay, like this. Now help me out here. If this is the afferent arteriole, what do you think we call the one that's leaving? You probably can guess that, right?
Was it efferent?
That's right. It is the efferent arteriole. EFFERENT, right? It's exiting, right? It's coming out, right? Arteriole. Okay. Now this capillary network here on the inside, this is really hard to say. I still have trouble pronouncing it. Let me just write it out first. It's called the glomerulus. Glomerulus. Okay. You can look at the auto-generated caption. Okay. Glomerulus, that's what it is. So it's a special network that is found inside the Bowman's capsule. Okay, now listen to this very important point. So far, it's just a bunch of blood vessels and there is no like urine. Like, where are the urine, right? So as the blood is being squeezed through the glomerulus, remember we said like capillaries are leaky, right? Things comes out of the capillaries all the time, right? We learned this again way back in January. And so when the blood goes through the glomerulus, things are gonna get squeezed out. Okay, not blood, but like, you know, water, waste product, and even nutrients, they get squeezed out. Okay, and whatever gets squeezed out from the Bowman's capsule, from the glomerulus, whatever gets squeezed out from the glomerulus will be captured by the Bowman's capsule. So all that liquid that comes out will get contained by the Bowman's capsule. And then it will continue to flow along the inside of the nephron. And this liquid that's inside, that yellowish liquid that's inside, that's called the filtrate. Filtrate. Okay, and whatever's in the filtrate will eventually becomes urine. Okay, because you filter out the blood and then you create the filtrate. But like I said, this is just the first step of urine production. There's a lot of good stuff in there that we want to get back. Okay, like we want to absorb back some of the water, we want to get back some of the nutrients, and that's going to happen like along the way of the nephron. Okay, but the key thing here to remember is the filtrate will, it's just the fluid that's inside the nephron right now. Okay, let me just get a bigger coloring thing here. Okay, so that's the filtrate. Okay, so we'll talk about how we change the content of the filtrate later on. But so far, are we together? Any question at all?
Which one is the afferent arterial?
This one is the efferent. Yeah, this one.
Which one? Like in the.
Oh, the one that's coming out.
Oh, the one coming. Okay.
Yeah, like this one. Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's finish the blood vessel first. Now, this part is hard to draw without messing up the diagram, but I will try it to see if this works out. Okay. So this efferent arteriole will then become another network of capillary. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw like this big ball, this big capillary network. Okay, right. You don't have to draw it if it like messes up your diagram too much. Okay, and then it's gonna come back out here. It's gonna go back. Okay, so this network of capillary, that's called the peritubular capillary. I know it's a lot of terms. I'm sorry. Peritubular capillary. Okay. And where does it go afterwards, the peritubular capillaries? Well, it will then become the cortical radiate vein again, right? And then the arcuate vein, and then it just goes all the way back. Okay, so that was the missing thing that we couldn't draw yet, because this relates to the nephron. All right, and I'll tell you the function of these peritubular capillaries in a bit. Okay. So just quick recap. The blood comes up from these cortical radiate artery, travels along the afferent arteriole into the glomerulus, where you will filter the blood. Whatever is not filtered will come back out into the efferent arteriole, which then opens up into another network of capillaries. And afterwards, it will just go back out through the counterparts of the arteries. So cortical radiate vein, arcuate vein, so on and so forth. We'll label it in the diagram after the break again, and it will probably make even more sense. Okay. Now, maybe I'll just take this away so that it's less cluttering. Okay, but I will leave like a vessel here. Okay, just to show you that it's gonna become the peritubular capillaries like that. Okay. You probably have to redraw this, right? Like after class to make it, you know, more neat and makes more sense. Okay, so let's finish this here. We're almost done with the diagram. So the field tray will continue forward, down, right? Come back up like that, right? So the first part here, this is called the, let me choose a different color to label all these nephron parts. So this over here, this is called a proximal tubule. So a lot of things are going to be happening in the proximal tubule. We'll learn that later. It's going to go down and come back up. Right? So this whole thing here, that's called the loop of Henle. Loop of Henle. And we have the descending part, descending limb, as well as the ascending limb. And they do different things. Let me zoom in for you. Okay. So together, the descending limb and the ascending limb forms the loop of Henle. I receive a question. The filter blood will go to the efferent arterial and back to the cortical radial vein to the, yeah, but first it must pass through this peritubular capillary. Okay, so from efferent, it will go through the capillaries. Something's going to happen there, we'll explain later. And then it will join back to the cortical radial vein. That's correct. Okay, so proximal tubule, descending limb, ascending limb, and then we have the distal tubule. Opposite of proximal is distal. And then we have the collecting duct. Okay, so that's the nephron. I guess I should put Bowman's capsule in purple as well because that's part of the nephron as well, right? Capsule. Okay. Now take a look at this, please. I'm just going to draw another renal pyramid here. Okay. Okay, watch before you copy. So by now you should know. Bowman's capsule, proximal tubule. The loop of Henle will dip into the medulla and then comes back up. So descending limb, ascending limb, distal tubule, and then the collecting duct will go back down into the medulla and go all the way to here. Okay, I'm going to draw another one here for you. I'm just going to, draw a little bit lower because they don't always have to start at the same point. You have the Bowman's capsule, proximal tubule, loop of Henle that dips down and come back up, distal tubule, and the collecting duct. Remember, these are hollow structures, and inside them are the filtrate, and the filtrate will become the urine. So look, the filtrate will travel down the collecting duct, which leads to the renal papilla. So this comes out, the filtrate comes out, and then it will go to the renal papilla, the tip of your pyramid, right? And I really, really hope you're with me on this, okay? The renal papilla will, like the icicle, right? Keeps on dripping, and it will go out to which part here? Where does it all go?
Ureter.
Way before the ureter, there's a bunch of other things, right?
Oh,
Eventually.
wait.
Okay.
The minor calyx.
Yes, the minor calyx. The minor calyx, right? And then from the minor calyx, they will join together to the major calyx, right? And from the major calyx, you can look at the diagram we drew, like at the beginning of the lesson, right? Where does it go after the major calyx? Almost there.
Renal pelvis.
That's right, the renal pelvis. And then the ureter, urinary bladder, and then the urethra. And then finally, after that very, very long journey outside of the body, okay? Now I know I totally understand it's like information overload, like a whole bunch of new things that you have to know. But you know, just go through the notes now, go through the drawing, see if you can make the connections with the different parts, right? The parts of the kidney, the microscopic nephron, and how it connects with the blood vessels. Okay, so let's take 8-minute break. Okay, we will resume at 10 o'clock. Okay, and during this time, maybe you can go through the notes, you know, take a break as well, and then we will label it in one of those study guide diagram. Okay, I'll see you in a bit.
Professor, can you zoom out?
Right, let's keep going. Any questions before we do more labelings and stuff like that? Anything at all? Okay. Let's go back to our study guide here, and we will label we'll label some of these things. Okay, so here is it's a simple nephron, right? We'll just label it one more time before we get to the complicated one. And I know it's a lot of repetition actually, but hopefully the repetition will help you. Okay, so we have the afferent arteriole going in here. Okay, so I'm going to put an arrow here. That's the afferent. Arteriole. And when it goes into the Bowman's capsule, it will become the glomerulus. Glomerulus. Okay. And we filter some blood there. Not everything will be filtered. Whatever is not filtered will come out on the other end. Lost my color here. Which is this one? Okay. Will come out, and that would be the efferent arteriole. So this first part is the Bowman's capsule, right? Or the glomerular capsule, depending, again, what you read, depending on textbook. Bowman's capsule. And I know it's already a lot of stuff, but these two things together combined is called the renal corpuscle. Okay. Like sausage plus the bun, we call it hot dog. Renal corpuscle is the glomerulus along with the Bowman's capsule. All right. Everything that gets squeezed out from the glomerulus will be captured by the Bowman's capsule. And like I said, it's gonna continue onward, right? Okay, continue onward. Come back up like that. So what do we call this yellow stuff? What is the fluid inside the nephron? What do we call them?
Filtrate.
The filtrate, that's correct. Okay, so all this yellow stuff, that's the filtrate in there. I'm not gonna label it, we'll just leave it as it is. Maybe I use a darker color here to separate the different portions. Okay, so the nephron is separated into different sections based on the function. We haven't learned the functions yet, we will. So over here, that is the proximal tubule. Gonna go down here, descending limb, ascending limb, but collectively is the loop of Henle. Okay, now just gonna give you a little bit of context here. Right, this is gonna be the renal cortex. Remember, less salty, right? Lower osmolarity. And then we're inside the pyramid now, so that would be the renal medulla, which is more salty. I'll explain what that means later on. Distal tubule here. Collecting duct. Okay. Remember, running along the edge here is the arcuate artery. Right? There's an arcuate artery that runs along the outer edge of the pyramid, and then you have these cortical radii artery that are coming up and branching off from it is the afferent arteriole, right? Okay. That is the simplify diagram. And I know simplify already seems pretty busy and complicated. All right, now the crazy diagram here. Now, you really need color for this stuff. Otherwise, it's really hard to see. So what I want you to do is trace out the nephron. Okay? If you can trace out the nephron, it'll make it easier. Okay, so we start right here. Okay, and then we would just trace the tube. Okay, and like I said, in real life, I mean not real life, but like inside the body, the nephron, it's all twisted up like this, right? All twisted up. There we go. That's the nephron. Everything else is vessels, blood vessels. Okay, so could you spend a moment, take a moment, like a minute or two, tracing out the path the filtrate would follow? So I'll start you off here. Like from the Bowman's capsule, it will go here, right? Just try to trace it out, right? So you can see where things are going. I'm gonna give you a minute to do that, please. And when you're doing it, hopefully you would appreciate that there are all these twists and turns, right, in the pathway, which is what is really happening in the kidney. It's not a straight flow. Right? It's like going down a very fun water slide at the water park. Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's a good little description there, Min. So there we go. Okay, hopefully you have all the arrows. Okay. Now let's do what we did in the earlier labeling. Okay. If you recognize some numbers, okay, let's do the ones here first. That's referring to the nephron. We'll do the vessels later. Okay. If you know what they are pointing at, please just type them out. Anything that you recognize at all. Like, these ones. These are the ones that I expect you to be able to identify after all the drawings that we did together. Good, we have some answers coming in. Yeah, number one is Bowman's capsule. Excellent. Brill, Bowman's capsule. Shelley says 15 is glomerulus. Very good. Zia, 11, collecting duct. Very good. Anyone else? 14, 13. Probably not 14. 14 is a little bit tricky. I'll do that one later. 13, Brill again for proximal tubule. Yep, that's right. Right, because if you trace it, right, that's the first part you will hit, right? Yeah, Min also got that. What about 12? Anyone? Any takers for 12?
Sir, so both 13 and 14 are the proximal tubule?
No, 14 is it's pointing at the vessel, which we will get to in a second. But 12, what would 12 be? Come on, you can do it.
Ascending tubule?
This is the ascending would be like this part, right? Like coming up here, right?
Okay.
So that's okay. What would 12 be, Leah, after the ascending?
Oh, distal.
That's right, you got it.
Okay, so like the ascending and descending is a part of the loop, but where does the loop
Yeah.
stops at that part, right?
Yeah, like this loop, like essentially after, as soon as it comes out and after it start turning, then we can call that like distotubio, basically. Like all this mumbo jumbo here, that's part of the distotubio as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So 10, right? 10 is the loop of Henle. Loop of Henle. Okay. I hope that makes sense. Now to do the blood vessels, that is a little bit of a chore, but you know we got to do it. We just have to. Right. So this one goes in, feeds into it, and hopefully you would know by now that is the afferent arterial, right? AFF, afferent arterial. Now I am deliberately doing this backwards, okay? Because sometimes thinking it backwards is another way to really see if you understand what's going on. Okay, so what about this one? This one, where the afferent arterial is branching off from. You can look at a diagram.
Cortical radian.
Excellent. That is the cortical radial artery. I keep on calling it the crazy hair, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like the pyramid, and then you have the arcuate, and then the crazy hair, the cortical radial artery, which is number 4 here. Okay, I'm just gonna write a whole name. Cortical radial artery. I'm just gonna put A, okay? Because like I can't fit everything in there. Okay. What about number 6 here? Number 6.
The arcuate artery.
Good, very good. See, it's not so much about why do we have to learn this, but it's about whether you can, memorize a bunch of difficult stuff and understand them, right? It's not so much about the content sometimes, because if you go into nursing, you're gonna have to memorize a lot more stuff that might not be immediately relevant, but you have to memorize them. So it's like learning how to learn in this course, in a way. What about number 8? Number 8.
Interlobar artery.
Yeah, that's the interlobar artery, right? Okay, so everything else should be straightforward. What is that? Number 5, number 7, and then number 9 is just the counterparts, right? Of the artery. So this guy would be the cortical radial vein, right? That's CRV. This one is CRA, like the tax people. CRV, like the Honda SUV. And then we have the arcuate artery here. Number 7, we have the arcuate vein, interlobar vein. Okay. And over here, we have another little guy. Number 3. What's number 3? Can someone help me with number 3, please?
Was it different?
That's right. That is the efferent arterial. Still using red though. Okay. There we go. Okay. Of course, you have the glomerulus here. And then there's this part, okay? Which what was it? Number 14, right? Number 14 is this. Let me just go back here for a second. Number 14 is the peritubular capillary. You remember I did like a big ball here and then I erased it because it was like in the way, right? But that's pretty much it. The efferent anterior is going to become the peritubular capillary. And this diagram illustrates that quite nicely. Okay, but when you have time, I guess, I mean, like if you want to do it now, sure, because I'm going to do it. But you might want to, you know, really color it in properly afterwards, right? So that's going to be the peritubular capillaries, and it wraps around the nephron. Okay, kind of like those plants that climbs around like the exterior of a building or something. I don't know what those things are called, but it's like that. It's all entangled. The is it ivy? Okay, I never knew that was ivy, but sure. There we go. So it's just wrapping around it, and you know, at some point, they are gonna become like blue. Not like literally blue, but then like in terms of the color that we use to represent it, because it's gonna transition into the vein, right? Okay, so there we go. There we go. Okay, so this whole thing is called a peritubular capillary. Peri means next to, so it's a network of capillary that is next to the tube being, of course, the nephron. Okay, now I'm just gonna briefly tell you the relationship between the nephron and the peritubular capillaries. Okay, I'll explain it again later. But basically, the filtrate that we produce at the glomerulus, all this stuff that are coming out, there is still a lot of good things in it, like nutrients and water that we want to take back. Okay, so along the rest of the way in the proximal tubules, distal tubules, loop of Henle, these parts, we're going to be extracting some of the stuff from the filtrate and put it back into our blood, because we want to keep it, we want to conserve it, especially if we are like dehydrated or something. Then we really want to reduce the urine volume, so we want to absorb as much water as possible from the filtrate. Okay, so when you absorb it, where does it all go? Well, it's convenient to have the capillaries, the peritubular capillaries right next to the nephron. So whatever you absorb from the filtrate, you can immediately put back in the blood. Okay, imagine this. There are two conveyor belts. Okay, two conveyor belts. One represents filtrate, the other represent blood. Okay, and then you have these workers in between, which really are like, you know, transport proteins, and they're looking at the filtrate that's passing by, and then there are like stuff in the filtrate. Okay, and then they're spotting for things like, oh, there is that blue thing that's like, you know, maybe it's glucose or something. Let's grab that and put it back in the blood. Okay, oh, another glucose, let's put it back in the blood. Maybe you spot some potassium and you're particularly low in potassium at that instance, so you want to grab that and put it back into the blood. Okay, maybe, just maybe, there is some waste product that you missed initially. Okay, this orange thing, whatever it represents. Okay, oh, we missed that at the glomerulus. Let's grab that and put it into the filtrate. Right, do you understand? So the blood, the conveyor belt, that's basically the peritubular capillary, and then the filtrate is basically the nephron. And then we always try to, like, you know, take things from the blood and put it back in the filtrate, things that we want to get rid of, and then whatever in the filtrate that we want to keep, we'll put it back into the blood. So they're parallel to each other, and it allows this kind of back and forth exchange until at the end of the collecting duct, you know, the final product, when you do get the urine, that it's just things that we actually want to get rid of, and we kept, you know, whatever nutrients that we wanted to keep. Does that make sense? This particular illustration, hopefully it highlights the relationship between the peritubular capillaries and the nephron. Okay. So ultimately, the peritubular capillary will merge with the CRV, cortical radial vein, and the rest of the story you know already. That's it for the anatomy. Took like hour and a half, but that's it. That's all the anatomy we're gonna learn for the kidney. Any questions before we move on to the physiology, the how it works component?
Professor, can you zoom out a bit, please?
Yeah, no problem. There you go. So in case you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and beaten up by all this information, I have some good news that might cheer you up a little bit. Okay. Traditionally, when we do quiz number 3 is on the kidney unit, right? Because there's so much information and there's a little bit difficulty to it. I allow students to do it 2 times. Okay, 2 times. And there are going to be 2 attempts, and it's the best one that will be recorded. Okay, so hopefully that lifts your spirit a little bit and less grumpy after all that stuff. Okay, let's move on. Back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so now if you look at the diagram like this, it makes sense, right? What goes where, and the relationship. The purple thing are the nephron, and you can see the loop goes down, so on and so forth. Okay, nephron and urine production. So each kidney is composed of over 1 million nephrons, the thing we just spend a lot of time explaining and labeling. And these are, again, microscopic structures. You can't see them with your naked eye. You have to create a thin slice of the kidney, put it under the microscope, and you'll be able to see them. And they are the functional units of the kidneys. Okay, what that means is your kidney is able to carry out its function, production of urine, because on a microscopic level, the nephrons are the ones that are doing it. In terms of the structure, you should be familiar with it by now. After we label it like 3 times, right? That's the flow of the filtrate inside the nephron. And after the collecting duct, there's no more modification. Okay, you can keep on modifying the contents of the filtrate along the way, but as soon as it leaves the collecting duct, then no more modification. Okay, collecting duct is just going to go to the papilla, the calyxes, and then pelvis, outer ureter. You can't change it anymore. So if you want to reabsorb stuff, you must do it before the end of the collecting duct. Label the nephron we did already. This is just another drawing. Again, it's good idea for you to match the parts to what we drew together, as well as with with the other label diagrams. Okay, I'm not gonna go through this again. Okay, that's a good question. Let's try this. Let me relaunch the poll here. All right, I have quite a bit of results here. So this question really ask you to think about what the nephron position is. Okay, so we have the Bowman's capsule, proximal tubule, loop of Henle, distal tubule, and collecting duct. And if there's damage to the renal medulla, which is like this part here, right? That's where the pyramid is. Then it will affect the loop of Henle as well as the collecting duct. Okay? These things are likely unaffected because they are in the cortex and not the medulla. Okay? So here is a picture of the glomerulus. Okay, and actually, the Bowman's capsule has been dissolved away. Right? If the Bowman's capsule is still there, you wouldn't be able to see the glomerulus, right? Because the glomerulus is like encased within the Bowman's capsule. Right? So the Bowman's capsule has been removed, and you see all these little spongy stuff. They are the glomerulus. And then there is a vessel that goes into it. That would be the afferent arteriole. And the one that's coming out would be the efferent arteriole. Together, the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule forms the renal corpuscle. All right, urine formation. Let me give you an analogy to help you visualize what's going on with the urine formation. Okay, so urine formation has three key steps to it. Okay, there's the glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Right. So it's like cleaning out the closet. I don't know if you do that or not. Okay, but you know, sometimes I have to clean out my closet. I have to clean out my kid's closet, and this is how I usually do it. Okay? When cleaning out the closet, I would go in, and then I would take out a bunch of stuff that are just like, you know, lying around in random places. So I would take out a bunch of stuff and I put them in the bedroom floor. Okay, so that pile that I took out, right? It's kind of like glomerular filtration. It's not a selective process, right? I just take out a lot of stuff to make room, right, in the closet so that I can organize it better, right? Okay, a lot of the clothing that I took out are actually clothes that I want to keep. Okay, some I might want to donate and not keep, right? But in that pile, there are a lot of good stuff that I actually want to keep. Okay. So after I have that big pile of clothing on the floor, I would go through each piece of clothing individually. I'm like, oh, okay, this one's nice. I want to keep it back. So I fold it back and then I put it back in the closet. Okay. And then next one, oh, this one I want to get rid of. I want to donate it maybe. So I leave it on the pile. So I just, you know, sort it back and forth, right? And that's what tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion is. Okay. In tubular reabsorption, your body goes through the filtrate, right? And see what we actually want to keep. What do we want to put back into the blood? Because not everything that took out needs to be get rid of, right? Okay, so you will take back whatever you need, and you know, maybe on the way going back to the closet, when I put the folded shirt back on the shelf, I noticed another piece of clothing that I, you know, no longer fit or that I want to get rid of. Then I would take that out and then add it to the pile, right? And that's what tubular secretion is. Along the way, your body might have additional things from the blood that you want to add to the filtrate. Maybe it missed it in the filtration process, right? So you want to have the opportunity to do that later on. Okay, so glomerular filtration is the first step, and it's a relatively non-selective process. And ends up a lot of the filtering, a lot of the material that has been filtered are useful things that you want to keep. Okay, so that happens at the glomerulus, and then tubular reabsorption. We take back what we need from the filtrate. Remember that two conveyor belt thing I was telling you, right? The filtrate and the blood. So you take whatever's in the filtrate that you want to keep, put it back in the blood. Okay, and that happens along the rest of the way in the nephron. And we also have tubular secretion, which is the other way now, right? You're taking things that you've missed in the blood and you put it into the filtrate. So the filtration step, the first step, is the first step in urine formation. And this process is primarily driven by blood pressure. Regular capillary blood pressure is about 25 mmHg, okay? But the pressure in the glomerulus is as high as 60 to 90 mmHg, and that it's regulated by controlling the diameter of the afferent arteriole and the efferent arteriole. Okay, so this is your glomerulus, okay, and you have the afferent AFF going in, and then you have your efferent coming out. Okay, so what your body can do is it can increase the diameter of the afferent, so more blood goes in, and then it leaves the efferent arterial diameter unchanged, right? So that would increases the pressure in the glomerulus, right? Because there's a lot more blood coming in faster than is being drained. And that causes the pressure to increase substantially. Combine that with the fact that the capillary is porous, it has a lot, it's leaky, then you are able to squeeze out a lot of things, okay? But large molecules like proteins, they don't come out. Okay? They are too big for, even though the glomerulus is leaky, but the proteins are really big, they won't be able to come out. Blood cells will also remain in the blood and they will not come out. Right? So these things, the proteins, the blood cells, they will continue forward in the efferent arteriole. And it's also important to understand that, you know, you have the blood going in, but not all of the liquid's gonna get squeezed out, right? Otherwise, you're gonna end up with like this solid slug that's not gonna be able to flow in the bloodstream, right? So like a majority of the water, like the water component of the blood, is gonna remain inside the blood vessel, okay? But you filter a portion of it. That's why this has to be a continuous process, right? You're not gonna be able to filter everything at one go, okay? So anything that's not filtered will continue to travel to the efferent arteriole, which is something that we talked about already. So here are some of the stuff that actually goes into the Bowman's capsule. We have water. Again, not all of the water in the blood, a majority of it, okay? The rest will continue forward. We have some nitrogenous base, nitrogenous waste, such as ammonia, right? Urea, those are nitrogenous base waste. Small molecules like glucose, ammonia, glucose, amino acid, and vitamins, they will be able to go through. And these are things that we actually want to keep, right? But again, because of the nature of the filtration process, it's not very selective. So some of these good stuff do end up leaking out, which we will have to bring back in later, bring back into the blood. We'll lose some electrolytes, sodium chloride, bicarbonate, and then we have some actual waste products. Things that are not filtered include your form elements, your blood cells, red cells, white cells, and platelets, as well as large plasma proteins, right? The albumin that we talked about, that's going to stay in your blood vessels. You know, other like antibodies and all that stuff, all the proteins just stay within the blood vessels. So in the end, the glomerular filtration process creates a filtrate that is essentially protein-free plasma. What does that mean? Well, you remember in lecture 2, we said if you spin the blood down, you will have the hematocrit at the bottom, and then the top would be the plasma, right? And plasma is mostly water with stuff that are dissolved in it, right? Along with the proteins. So this stuff that you create, the filtrate that you create in the glomerulus, is essentially the plasma minus the protein. Okay, so plasma minus protein is protein-free plasma. All right. And then we move on to the proximal tubule, and this is the last thing we'll learn. Okay, we're gonna stop after this. At the proximal tubule, the main function is reabsorption. Right? Reabsorption. Sometimes they say reabsorption because you're taking it back, like you're reclaiming it, reabsorption. Sometimes they just say absorption. It's the same meaning. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so at the proximal tubule, about 60 to 70%. Do I have that right written down? Yeah, about 60 to 70% of the filtrate that you produce will be taken back to the blood, which makes a lot of sense, okay? Because look at the list that we filtered out, right? You want to take back most of the water, okay? The waste you can leave out. But these glucose, amino acid, and even some of the salts and the bicarbonate, we want to take back. We want to keep it in the blood. So 60 to 70% of everything that we lost, that we sent to the filtrate in the first step, will be reabsorbed at the proximal tubule. Okay, and this is done both by active transport, which means it requires the use of ATP, as well as passive transport. Okay, some things just happens by maybe facilitated diffusion or osmosis for water, right? And that doesn't require energy. But whatever you're absorbing, perhaps with the exception of water, everything else that you absorb at the proximal tubule will require a carrier protein to do it. Will require some kind of transport protein to facilitate the process. Okay, and for that reason, if the carriers are all working at maximum speed, then they cannot absorb any faster or any further. So for each substance, there is a threshold level associated with it. Okay, this is a little bit confusing, so allow me to explain again. Hold on. Remember the conveyor belt analogy? Okay, so let's just do that one more time. Okay, so that is the this is the filtrate. Filtrate. Okay, and this is freshly from the glomerulus, from the Bowman's capsule. Bowman's capsule. Okay, so it has a lot of good stuff, a lot of goodies. Okay, we're just gonna focus on the glucose. Okay, so I'm gonna put some green dots here. That represents glucose. Okay. And over here we have the blood, right? Which is the peritubular capillary. And here is the proximal tubule, right? Yeah. I mean, you don't have to draw this down. You can just watch me explain. So to take the glucose back into the blood, which is what we want to do. We want to keep the glucose. Glucose is valuable resources, right? You will need to have transport protein that does that. So I'm going to put these green people here. And the job of the green people is to spot the glucose. They will grab the glucose and then put them back into the blood. Okay. But you know, these people only have two hands. Okay. And they only able to grab the glucose and then put them back. Okay, grab them, put them back, put them back, right? And they could only do it, you know, so fast. If all the green people here are working as fast as they could, and there are a lot of glucose, right? Then what ends up happening is, yeah, sure, you're gonna take most of the glucose back, right? And put them back into the blood. But you're gonna end up missing some. They are just gonna continue forward, all right, to the loop of Henle, right, to the distal tubule. Do you understand that? So each substance, whether it be glucose, maybe it's like, you know, potassium, maybe it's like some amino acid that we want to take back, whatever the case is, right? You're gonna need to have a transporter for it, and that transporter being protein, like a membrane protein. And if those proteins are working at maximum capacity, then you won't be able to increase the absorption further, okay? So that caps how much you can take back, right? So each substance has a threshold level, okay, beyond which you won't be able to absorb any more. So if there's more than certain concentration of glucose in the filtrate, right, you won't be able to absorb the excess, and then it will just end up in the urine. Okay, so like if there are these like pink stuff, pink molecules that we need to take back, and maybe there are some potassium or whatever, then you will need like pink transporter, right, to take them back. And if they are working at full speed, then they've reached the threshold, you won't be able to absorb it any further. All right. What condition, medical condition, would cause a person to have high glucose in their pee, in their urine?
Diabetic.
Yeah, exactly. Diabetes, right? We're gonna learn about diabetes later on, but basically they have a lot of glucose, and at the proximal tubule, the transporters are working at full speed, so the glucose will not be reabsorbed, and they end up staying in the filtrate. And by now you should understand the filtrate is what will become the urine, right? So it ends up just peeing it out. Okay, so that is what's going on. Any questions? Okay. So what are we taking back? All the useful stuff, right? Water, we want to take back. Nutrients, some salt, nutrients like glucose, amino acids, salts like sodium, right? Maybe some potassium, some chloride. And for a reason we're not going to go into it. Like it sounds weird that we want to take some urea and uric acid back. But it's too complicated to explain. Okay, like we just did. Okay, it's like that ugly sweater. Okay, after you clean out the closet, you're like, oh, that sweater. Okay, I don't know why we want to keep it, but let's keep it. Let's put it back in the closet. Okay, so we're gonna keep some of the urea and the uric acid, but these are the stuff that we're not gonna take back. Okay, so we have to have some water to continue to flush it out, right? Nitrogenous waste product like ammonium, urea. Excess salts that we don't need at the moment, creatine, urochromes, and then there are these molecules that are not recognized by carriers. Right? What does that mean? Well, caffeine. Right? If you drink coffee, right, caffeinated drinks, caffeine will go into your blood, and then it gets filtered at the a glomerulus, right? And we don't have a transporter for caffeine, so all these molecules will stay in the filtrate, right? Things like medicine, right? Your liver metabolizes the penicillin and it creates some kind of byproduct. Your body doesn't recognize it, then it won't get reabsorbed. Okay, so that's a interesting thing to remember. Okay, we'll talk about this later as well. But let me try to explain it for now. If you drink coffee, right, you probably know that it makes you go to the bathroom like more than you otherwise would. And that's because, the caffeine in the coffee does not get reabsorbed. It stays in the filtrate. So you have all these caffeine in the filtrate, right? Okay, so it's going to go on into the nephron, and then what happens is because of all these caffeine that is in the filtrate, it causes the osmolarity, the concentration of the filtrate, to go up. And we learned in lecture 2 or 1, I forgot which one it was, that if you have a lot of filtrate, a lot of concentrate, sorry, if you have a lot of solute in a solution, it will draw water into it, right, from the surrounding. Okay, it creates like it causes the surrounding to be hypotonic, right? So it's draw all these water into your filtrate, and that increases your your urine volume. Right? That's why drinking caffeinated drinks makes you pee more often. Okay, but that's the same case with other stuff, right? Pretend these little black dots are not caffeine anymore, that they're glucose, right? For diabetic patients who are not regulating their blood sugar by taking insulin, for example, they would also experience polyuria, frequent urination, because the glucose now stays within the filtrate and it draws all these water from the surrounding, and then they pee a lot. Okay, they get dehydrated. Okay, let's see. So 60 to 70% of the volume of the filtrates produced from the Bowman's capsule will be reabsorbed at the proximal tubule. And then absorption is regulated by how much is in the blood currently. Sometimes I already have enough sodium. Maybe you know chuck down a bag of chips, and you already have like the family size I'm talking about, not those like little small ones. Like you chuck down like the whole bag of family size Lay's. Your blood sodium might be very high, and you don't need as much sodium in the blood, so you can get rid of them. You don't need to reabsorb them, right? So depending on how much you already have in the body, right, how much you reabsorb at the proximal tubule might vary. It's also regulated by hormones. Okay, and this is the last thing we want to talk about before we end today's lecture. Blood pH is controlled by secretion of hydrogen ions and reabsorption of bicarbonate ions. Okay, so we're gonna explain this point here. Sorry guys, all this talk about urine makes me need to go to the bathroom. I'll be back. Just give me 2 minutes. Okay. Blood pH is very important. Okay? We cannot allow the pH of the blood to fluctuate too much, because if it's too acidic or too basic, it's going to start unraveling the proteins that are in the plasma, and that's going to cause quite a bit of problems. So we have what's called a buffer system in the blood. A buffer system. Okay? A buffer is basically something that resists small changes in pH. Resist small changes in pH. So if it becomes acidic, the buffer will bring it back up to neutral. If it's too basic, it will bring it back down to neutral. So a little bit of chemistry here. We have cellular respiration, right? Like C6H12O6 plus 6 oxygen, producing 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water and some ATP. What happens to this carbon dioxide? Sure, we breathe most of it out, but it turns out, right, the carbon dioxide will actually react with the water. CO2 plus H2O. Does anybody know what this produces? You learned this in your chemistry class again, I think. What is the result? No? Okay. H2CO3, right? Carbonic acid. Yeah. So the carbonic acid is the main buffering system in the body. And so carbonic acid, aqueous, is going to dissociate. Did you guys learn acid and base in chemistry yet? Or is that like later on?
And not yet. I think
No?
the last chapter for this.
Oh, okay. That's why you guys didn't know the answer. Okay, sorry. So H2CO3 is gonna dissociate, right? It's gonna basically break down into H plus and HCO3. Okay, so this is bicarbonate. Bicarbonate ion, the same one as the as the one in pancreatic juice, right? Sodium bicarbonate. And then this is a hydrogen ion. Right? Now, what they did not tell you in chemistry class is chemical reaction actually can go both ways. Okay, so it could shift this way and make H plus and bicarbonate, or these things can recombine and form H2CO3 again. Okay, so pH, right? pH equals to 7 is neutral. You learned that last semester, I think. If pH is less than 7, that means it is acidic. And that means you have high H plus. On the other hand, if pH is greater than 7, then it's basic. That means you have low H plus. Okay, low H plus. Or another way to say low H plus is high OH. Okay. So that is that. So let's see what happens. Right? What happens is, let's say your blood pH drops. Right? Blood pH drops. So that means there are excess H plus. Excess H plus. So how does the buffer work? Right? So to maintain homeostasis, excess H plus combines with HCO3 to form H2CO3. So essentially, the HCO3, the bicarbonate, mops up the excess H plus, and then it shifts the equation towards the left. All right. So that happens in the blood, in blood. But like, what if we don't have enough HCO3, right? What are we gonna do with all the excess H plus? Okay. In the PowerPoint here, it says blood pH is controlled by secretion of hydrogen ions and reabsorption of bicarbonate ion, right? So that's exactly what happens at the kidney. So at the kidney, excess H plus is secreted. Secreted means from blood to filtrate. At the proximal tubule. Right? So it's going to end up in your urine. On the other hand, not only do we want to get rid of the excess H plus, right? Because your body is using up a lot of bicarbonate to mop up the excess H plus, you want to conserve them. So that's why we have absorption of HCO3 at the proximal tubule as well. And absorption is going from filtrate in the nephron back to the blood. Okay. So that's how the kidney plays a role in maintaining blood pH. Okay. Long story short, for the other case, if blood pH increases, if blood pH rises, so you have excess OH minus, right? Okay, like not enough, H plus, right? So in this case, the buffer will shift towards the right, right? H2CO3 dissociate to form more H plus. To form more H plus. I'm gonna say not enough H plus. Okay. And now, because we don't have enough H plus, you don't want to be secreting. Okay, so you would lower secretion of H plus at proximal tubule. Okay. You also don't need to have as many bicarbonate, so you would lower absorption of HCO3 at proximal tubule as well. Okay. Is that zoomed out enough, or like do you want Sashana, do you need me to go zoom out like that, you mean? Okay. Sorry, I can't fit everything on the same page. Okay, so that's all. That's all. All right. We will resume this next Monday. You don't have class with me on Wednesday. You just have to do your test. And then we'll do more next week. Okay. I'll post this stuff on eCentennial, so that you can look at it after the test. All right. Good luck with the test. And thank you for coming. I will see you next Monday. Bye for now.